Tonight at a Board of Trustees meeting in Thornton Township, the board and citizens looking for accountability to their finances while the township...
During a recent meeting with the residents of Dalton, Illinois, Mayor Tiffany Henyard made headlines once again, but this time for all the wrong reasons, further deepening the public outrage surrounding her controversial tenure. Arriving at the meeting with a sense of unwavering confidence, Henyard seemed entirely insulated from the growing scandals that have dogged her time in office. Instead of offering an apology or providing the clarity the community had hoped for, she shocked attendees with a display of arrogance and defiance, escalating tensions in a town already on edge. The village of Dalton has been grappling with a multitude of serious issues under Henyard's leadership, including growing allegations of corruption, financial mismanagement, and administrative chaos. Recent reports indicated that the state controller had suspended crucial payments to the village for failing to comply with essential financial reporting laws, while a looming $2 million budget deficit has added to the town's financial woes. Residents had gathered at the meeting in hopes of holding Henyard accountable for these dire circumstances, but what they received instead was a stunningly dismissive response from the mayor herself rather than addressing the concerns of the community. Henyard, who has been accused of misusing public funds for personal extravagances, took the extraordinary step of blaming the residents for their own financial struggles. In a jaw-dropping turn, she claimed that their financial difficulties were a result of their own inability to manage their community. This audacious statement stunned the crowd into silence as Henyard chastised her constituents, accusing them of being quarrelsome and irresponsible. It was a moment that felt almost surreal, akin to a villain in a movie shedding any remaining pretense of benevolence to reveal their true nature instead of acknowledging the growing financial crisis or responding to allegations of public funds being misappropriated under her leadership. Henyard's speech quickly devolved into a scornful tirade against the residents. Her refusal to take any responsibility for the challenges facing Dalton was glaringly apparent. For a community already reeling from the effects of Henyard's leadership, her dismissive attitude only added insult to injury. Those in attendance, many of whom had come seeking clarity and solutions, left feeling humiliated and demoralized. Meanwhile, Dalton's financial situation continued to worsen under Henyard's watch. Reports of squandered taxpayer money, questionable expenditures, and mismanagement of funds have become increasingly widespread, fueling suspicion and resentment among residents. Despite these mounting issues, the community has seen little tangible benefit from Henyard's time in office. The reported suspension of key funding, along with an expanding budget deficit, has only added to the sense of desperation in the town. The meeting's atmosphere was tense as residents, deeply frustrated by their mayor's leadership, sought answers. Instead of engaging with the crowd or demonstrating any willingness to collaborate on solutions, Henyard's response was characterized by brazen deflection and dismissiveness. Her apparent indifference to the mounting public unrest left many attendees feeling powerless and unheard. It seemed as though Henyard was completely unfazed by the growing anger around her, behaving as if she were immune to scrutiny. The display of defiance from a public official embroiled in a series of scandals is remarkable under any circumstances, but it was particularly striking in Henyard's case. Her administration has been accused of mismanaging public funds, failing to comply with state financial oversight laws, and contributing to Dalton's mounting debt. Despite the overwhelming criticism and the palpable anger of the residents, Henyard has somehow managed to maintain her position, prompting speculation about what systems or forces might be enabling her continued tenure. The crowd at the meeting could only watch in disbelief as Henyard exuded an air of invincibility, seemingly untouchable, even as her administration faces growing allegations of financial misconduct. Her tenure as mayor has come to symbolize a period of turmoil and hardship for Dalton, and many residents are now questioning whether their community can recover while she remains in office. The frustrations voiced at the meeting represent a much larger issue, a community struggling to hold its leadership accountable while facing the long-term consequences of administrative failure as Dalton's financial challenges deepen. With critical funding withheld by state authorities and residents increasingly desperate for solutions, Henyard's brazen display at the meeting serves as a stark reminder of the widening disconnect between the town's leadership and its people. The damage to Dalton's finances, infrastructure, and community trust is significant and cannot be overstated. In this context, the need for transparency, accountability, and reform has never been more urgent. The residents of Dalton, frustrated by a mayor who seems impervious to the gravity of their situation, are left wondering if their town can ever recover from the long-term effects of her leadership.
Developments in South Suburban Dalton today. First, the state comptroller has suspended some payments to the village because it has failed to follow the law.
Tiffany Henyard has become a figure synonymous with controversy. Her tenure as mayor of Dalton, Illinois, marred by numerous allegations of financial impropriety and questionable leadership, with her administration under intense scrutiny. The extent of her purported misconduct has solidified her reputation for all the wrong reasons. Reports have surfaced accusing Henyard of misusing public funds for personal expenses, adding fuel to the fire of public outrage. These allegations have attracted the attention of federal authorities, including the FBI, who have launched an investigation into her administration despite the gravity of the federal corruption probe. Henyard has continued to present herself in public with an air of defiance, almost as if she is untouchable. Her boldness in the face of such serious allegations is as shocking as the claims themselves. Among the most disturbing reports are those detailing Henyard's lavish spending on online shopping sprees, allegedly racking up a staggering $33,000 in a single day on platforms like Amazon, Target, and Wayfair. These revelations have stunned the residents of Dalton, a community already struggling with financial instability, as they grapple with the idea that taxpayer money was being squandered on personal luxuries. But Henyard's alleged financial recklessness goes beyond isolated shopping sprees. The fiscal stability of Dalton has deteriorated significantly under her leadership. As the village faces growing debt and a $2 million budget deficit, residents have demanded accountability. Instead, Henyard has maintained a steadfastly unapologetic stance, refusing to acknowledge the severity of the town's financial crisis and instead shifting the blame onto the very residents she was elected to serve. Her refusal to take responsibility was on full display during a recent public meeting, where many gathered in desperation to seek answers regarding the village's financial woes. The atmosphere in the room was one of palpable frustration and anger, as residents voiced their concerns about the town's spiraling situation. But instead of addressing these concerns or offering explanations, Henyard chose to launch an offensive against the residents themselves. She dismissed their grievances, accusing them of being the true cause of Dalton's problems. Rather than offering any sense of accountability, Henyard positioned herself as blameless, further alienating the very people who had entrusted her with leadership. Her cold demeanor and complete lack of empathy left attendees shocked and outraged. One witness at the meeting described Henyard's performance as disheartening, recounting how she sat before the crowd without a trace of humility or remorse. Instead of engaging in a meaningful dialogue or even acknowledging the financial troubles that her leadership had exacerbated, Henyard appeared indifferent to the concerns of the people who were directly impacted by her decisions. Her behavior was emblematic of a leadership style that has been defined by scandal, mismanagement, and a glaring disconnect from the needs of her constituents. The allegations against Henyard are both extensive and damning. Her administration has been accused of reckless spending and the gross misuse of public funds during a time when Dalton is grappling with severe financial instability. The village's finances are in disarray, and many residents are calling for greater transparency and accountability. Yet, Henyard continues to carry out her mayoral duties with an air of confidence, seemingly immune to the widespread outrage and skepticism surrounding her administration. It has become increasingly clear that she is either unwilling or unable to confront the deepening crisis under her watch. As Dalton's fiscal collapse worsens, Henyard's refusal to acknowledge the need for reform or take responsibility for her role in the town's decline has only exacerbated the sense of frustration among residents. Her alleged misuse of public funds has destabilized not only the village's economy, but also eroded public trust in local leadership. Many are now questioning whether the town can recover from the damage done under Henyard's leadership, while Henyard continues to project confidence in public. The looming federal investigation tells a different story. The FBI's probe into her activities underscores the seriousness of the allegations against her. Investigators are reportedly examining her financial dealings and the alleged misuse of village resources. It is not just the staggering figures tied to her personal spending that have caught attention, but the blatant disregard for the well-being of the very community she is meant to serve. The accusations suggest a pattern of behavior where public resources have been treated as a personal piggy bank, leaving Dalton's residents to shoulder the burden of her extravagance for the people of Dalton. The lack of accountability has become a bitter pill to swallow. Many had hoped that the recent meeting with Henyard would provide clarity or, at the very least, some indication that she understood the magnitude of the town's challenges. Instead, her appearance reinforced the perception of a leader more interested in deflecting blame than addressing the root causes of the village's problems. This approach has only deepened the divide between Henyard's administration and the residents she was elected to represent. The people of Dalton are left wondering how much longer they will have to endure the consequences of her leadership, and whether the town can ever recover from the mismanagement and scandal that have defined her time in office.
To be on the street fighting crime, and instead we have several officers that are riding.
For months, Mayor Tiffany Henyard has been under investigation by the FBI after numerous complaints surfaced from former employees, business owners, and public officials, all raising serious concerns about her conduct. Subpoenas have been issued, records seized, and individuals close to Henyard questioned. Yet, despite the mounting scrutiny, Henyard continues to present herself as untouchable, going about her daily business with confidence and an apparent indifference to the grave allegations surrounding her. Branding herself as the people's mayor, she maintains a public persona of authority. But beneath the surface lies a troubling history of alleged corruption and abuse of power. The accusations against Henyard are numerous and span a wide range of offenses, with the misappropriation of public funds being just the tip of the iceberg. Reports allege that she has weaponized the local police force to serve her personal interests, using officers for tasks unrelated to public safety. Instead of patrolling the streets or addressing crime, some officers have allegedly been assigned to chauffeur Henyard to and from private events, at the taxpayers' expense. This blatant misuse of police resources has left many residents frustrated, particularly those who believe these officers should be focused on reducing crime rather than catering to the mayor's personal needs. However, the alleged misuse of the police force is just one aspect of Henyard's controversial leadership. She has also faced accusations of appointing close friends to critical roles within the community, often overlooking more qualified candidates in favor of loyalty. A glaring example of this was her appointment of a new village administrator, which took place while the previous administrator had not yet been formally removed. This move showcased Henyard's audacity, as she acted with complete disregard for protocol or public opinion, further cementing her reputation as a leader who operates above the rules. Henyard's conduct during public meetings has only fueled the frustration of her constituents. Instead of addressing concerns or taking accountability for the town's issues, she has reportedly adopted a dismissive and condescending tone. At a recent meeting, tensions ran high as residents gathered to voice their grievances and demand answers about the state of their community. However, Henyard used the platform not to listen but to deflect responsibility, shifting the blame onto the residents themselves. She declared that the town's problems were the result of their own failures. This deflection only deepened the crowd's anger, as her behavior has become emblematic of a leadership style marked by arrogance and a refusal to take responsibility. As Dalton grapples with financial mismanagement, allegations of corruption, and a fractured sense of community, Henyard continues to act as though she is immune to the consequences of her actions. The meeting quickly descended into chaos, with residents already fed up with her antics. One attendee, unable to contain their frustration, yelled, "Just arrest her already. She's a criminal and deserves to be in federal prison." This sentiment resonated throughout the room, as many others echoed similar calls for justice. They were tired of Henyard's attempts to cast herself as the victim. Despite the overwhelming evidence of wrongdoing adding to the community's frustration is Henyard's continued use of village funds for purposes that serve her personal interests rather than the public good. Her audacious spending habits, coupled with allegations of contract manipulation to benefit her inner circle, have left Dalton in financial disarray. Residents feel betrayed as they watch their tax dollars seemingly funneled into activities and appointments that do little to address the pressing needs of the town. Meanwhile, Henyard appears unfazed by the growing public unrest, continuing to hold meetings, schedule appointments, and manage village affairs as if she were beyond reproach. The boldness with which Henyard has conducted herself has only intensified the public's demand for justice. Despite federal authorities closely monitoring her actions, she has shown little sign of remorse or willingness to change course. During the public meeting, her demeanor, characterized by a refusal to engage constructively and a readiness to deflect blame, only fueled the crowd's annoyance. Many in attendance felt dismissed and disrespected, and their anger soon turned to calls for her immediate removal from office. Residents' growing frustration is not without cause. Henyard's actions, ranging from alleged financial misconduct to the weaponization of local resources, paint a troubling picture of a leader who has lost sight of her duty to serve the public. What makes her behavior even more concerning is the audacity with which she continues to operate, even as the FBI investigation continues to tighten around her administration. The people of Dalton are left wondering how much longer they will have to endure the fallout from her leadership and whether they will ever see real accountability for the damage done.
It's not paid by them.
Did you fly first class to Las Vegas?
The ongoing frustration of Dalton residents is palpable, as there have been no tangible repercussions for Mayor Tiffany Henyard, despite the mounting scandals and intense public outcry. Although the FBI has launched an investigation into her alleged financial impropriety and corruption, many citizens feel the process is moving too slowly, with no real action being taken. One resident even remarked that the situation isn't being treated seriously enough, citing the apparent lack of urgency in the FBI's investigation as a sign that Henyard's actions aren't being prioritized. This has left the community questioning how far she can push things before facing any real consequences, fearing that she may continue to act with impunity. Henyard, known for her unyielding drive to maintain her position, is not one to sit idly by. Time and again, she has demonstrated her determination to keep her job, going so far as to veto any attempts by the village board to investigate her or halt financial audits amid Dalton's dire fiscal situation. With her continued ability to wield power and her refusal to allow oversight, residents worry that nothing will improve until there is a change in leadership. As long as Henyard can shut down these efforts, it seems unlikely the village will see any accountability. In the near future, one particularly disturbing aspect of Henyard's resilience is her ability to leverage connections to protect herself. In a bold move, she invited two powerful defense attorneys, known for their aggressive tactics in high-profile cases, to a previous board meeting, making it clear she was prepared to defend herself at any cost. Their involvement has raised eyebrows, leading many to wonder how deeply Henyard's network runs and how far her legal connections stretch. Is she preparing for a fierce court battle? Or is this simply another tactic to intimidate anyone who might challenge her? Meanwhile, Henyard's image seems to be her primary focus as she strives to regain public support, despite the growing list of scandals surrounding her. In her latest attempt to reshape her narrative, she announced a State of the Village address, where she promised to present receipts that would supposedly prove her innocence. However, she has yet to disclose the specifics of these receipts or explain how they could possibly clear her name, leaving many skeptical about her intentions. This move is widely seen as a calculated part of her public relations campaign, designed to buy more time and keep the public in suspense, without addressing the broader issues facing Dalton. The tension between the residents, who are demanding justice, and the mayor, who is doing everything in her power to avoid it, continues to mount. It's unclear whether the legal system or public pressure will ultimately bring her reign to an end. As the FBI investigates and Henyard continues to play her cards, Dalton is left in limbo, wondering when or if any real accountability will ever come to pass.
As the supervisor, there will be no comment, there will be anything that will be need addressed.
Despite everything that has transpired, even Tiffany Henyard's most ardent supporters are beginning to have serious doubts about her leadership, and it's easy to understand why. Her time in office has been defined by a series of scandals that have severely tainted her reputation and fractured the town of Dalton. Allegations of financial mismanagement have plagued her tenure, with accusations that she has used village funds for personal gain, while living a lifestyle that's starkly at odds with the residents she was elected to serve. These charges have been compounded by claims of favoritism and abuse of power, creating a toxic political climate in which Henyard has alienated nearly every faction of the community, from trustees and residents to local law enforcement. As her once devoted supporters fade away, her detractors are growing in number, becoming more vocal in their calls for accountability and organizing in their demands for her resignation. Over the course of her time in office, the outrage has only intensified. Locals are becoming more and more tired of her controversial actions and lack of contrition. Protests outside of City Hall, which began as small gatherings of frustrated residents, have become commonplace and are now growing in size as calls for justice and transparency grow louder. These protests have evolved into a full-scale movement, demanding that Henyard be held accountable for her alleged wrongdoing for many of Dalton's residents. This is not just about a few bad decisions made by their mayor. It's about a sense of betrayal. What started as a few voices calling for change has now grown into a broader, more organized demonstration of frustration, amplifying the palpable sense of anger within the community. The protests outside City Hall have grown so intense that they are no longer viewed as isolated outbursts of dissatisfaction, but as clear indications of the deep disconnect between Henyard and the people she was elected to serve. The anger is real, and it's not going away despite the rising pressure and the growing public outcry. Henyard shows no signs of resigning or backing down. In fact, her reaction to the protests and public scrutiny has been one of defiance rather than contrition. Instead of taking the opportunity to address the mounting chorus of discontent with transparency and accountability, she has doubled down on her actions, displaying an unsettling willingness to push through the storm without acknowledging the harm she may have caused. Her behavior has been characterized by a complete lack of self-awareness or regret for the alleged mistakes, as she continues to attend public events and meetings with the same unshaken confidence. As if she is still in control of the narrative, there is no indication that Henyard intends to step aside, nor has she shown any regard for the widespread unrest that her actions have caused. On the contrary, it almost seems like she thrives on controversy, feeding off the constant scrutiny and negativity as fuel for her desire to retain power. Her refusal to step down or even acknowledge the mounting demands for her resignation only deepens the frustration of the townspeople, many of whom feel as if they've hit a wall in trying to hold her accountable for Henyard. It seems that holding on to power is the only thing that matters, regardless of the mounting consequences. Instead of facing up to her alleged failings, she's seemingly determined to push through, acting as if her continued presence in office is inevitable. This unwavering stance demonstrates an unnerving level of confidence in her ability to maintain control, even as the resistance against her grows stronger. As the situation in Dalton becomes more and more untenable, there is no clear path to resolution. Henyard's refusal to acknowledge the public's demands for accountability serves only to fuel the anger and dissatisfaction within the community. Pushing protests and unrest to new heights in a way, Henyard has become a symbol of unchecked power, operating in a bubble, seemingly immune to the pressures from the outside. As protests outside City Hall continue to swell, one can't help but wonder how far the situation will escalate before Henyard's position becomes untenable, or whether she will continue to stand firm, unyielding in the face of mounting pressure. The longer she holds on, the more likely it is that the tension in Dalton will explode into something even bigger, potentially leading to more widespread consequences for both the mayor and the town as a whole. The question is becoming more urgent with each passing day. How long can this continue? As tensions rise and uncertainty fills the air in Dalton, Illinois, will Tiffany Henyard, the embattled mayor, ever be held accountable for her controversial actions, or will she continue to avoid taking any responsibility for her alleged misdeeds? As the investigation into her financial mismanagement and questionable decisions goes on, the residents of Dalton are growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of justice. The people are clearly tired of waiting for a resolution that seems to be nowhere in sight. Even more concerning for them is the growing suspicion that Henyard may manage to escape any real consequences for her behavior. Despite surviving scandal after scandal and investigation after investigation, she continues to hold her position with seemingly no repercussions. For many in the community, it's almost as if Henyard is untouchable, a political survivor who has outlasted every challenge thus far. Her past actions, including dubious financial dealings, alleged misuse of taxpayer dollars, and reports of nepotism and intimidation, have left Dalton in disarray, yet she remains undeterred. It seems that Henyard has not only weathered the storm, but is showing a disturbing level of confidence, as though she can continue pushing forward without ever having to pay the price for her actions. What makes matters worse for Dalton residents is that Henyard doesn't appear to be backing down in the face of mounting pressure. Instead of acknowledging their concerns or offering a sincere apology for her role in the community's current financial crisis, she continues to blame the people of Dalton for the situation they find themselves in. Her dismissive attitude only deepens their frustration, and the protests outside City Hall have grown in number, with residents demanding answers. They are tired of hearing Henyard's feeble justifications and want her to finally take responsibility for her actions. Yet, it appears they are being ignored despite the continued uproar. Henyard attends public gatherings and meetings with the same air of arrogance and impunity, as though the growing pressure doesn't even faze her. The more the residents cry out for justice, the more Henyard seems determined to dig her heels in, seemingly intent on maintaining her grip on power no matter the cost. As tensions mount, residents find themselves increasingly divided over what course of action to take next. The seemingly unshakable hold Henyard has on the town's political structure leads many to wonder how much further she can push before finally facing some kind of consequence. Yet, in Henyard's mind, It appears that no force is great enough to unseat her from her position. People are left wondering if anyone or anything will be able to break the spell she has cast over Dalton. Will Henyard eventually be brought to justice, or will the very structure of power she has manipulated continue to protect her? More and more people are starting to believe that Henyard might actually make it through this period unscathed, that the prolonged investigations and mounting public outrage will amount to nothing. She seems to take every legal obstacle or protest in stride, presenting an image of confidence, even invincibility. Despite the waves of controversy, the FBI investigations, and the press digging deeper into her finances, Henyard behaves as though she is untouchable, as if all this too will pass. And yet, her ability to remain in power amid such uncertainty and discontent does not reflect well on her political acumen. It suggests a complete indifference toward the well-being of her constituents and a total lack of accountability. The town's people feel betrayed. Their mayor, who was entrusted with safeguarding their tax dollars and leading them through troubled times, instead squandered their resources, used her power for personal gain, and left the community in financial ruin. Yet, she continues to hold meetings, refuse accountability, and defend her choices as though she's still in full control, even as the residents' anger reaches a fever pitch. What was once a public servant, seemingly elected to improve the lives of the people, has become an entrenched figure at the center of numerous scandals. Still holding office and using her position as a shield as more scandals unfold and the pressure continues to mount, the people of Dalton are left to question how much longer Henyard can hold on. How long before her political career finally hits its breaking point? If it ever does, will the federal investigations or mounting civil protests ever be enough to bring her down? The question continues to multiply as Henyard brushes off any responsibility for her actions. For the residents of Dalton, the only certainty is that the path to justice remains uncertain. They are left to wonder just how much longer the status quo can continue before Henyard's grip on power finally comes to an end.